Hello and welcome to this tutorial on exception handling in Python. This is the part of Python for Beginners tutorials. You can find all of the videos collected in a list, links in the right up corner as usual. In this video, we will learn how to handle errors and exceptions that may occur in our Python programs. Before we start, friendly reminder to subscribe and leave your reactions in the comments. Thank you for your support. First, let's define what exceptions are. In Python, an exception is an error that occurs during the execution of our program. When the exception occurs, the program stops running and displays the error message. There are many types of exceptions in Python, such as syntax error, type error, name error, value error, and many more. Each exception corresponds to a specific error that can occur in your program. If you did some code and you followed this tutorial and did some code in Python already, I'm quite sure that you saw some of the exceptions by yourself already. So now let's talk about how to handle them. To handle an exceptions in Python, we use a try except block. The try block contains the code that may raise an exception, and the except block contains the code that handles this exception. So here is the simple example. So I would have try, 2 semicolons, then indentation, and then the code that may give me an error. So for example, I would ask a user to input a number. So I would ask, please enter a number. I would be polite to my user, and then I would just print this number. So very simple program. Then I would write except block. So if any error occurs, I would print to the user. So this code, I would handle it in the way that I will just let the user know. You can handle it in a different way. You can do something with the after the error and etc. So it depends on your needs. For me, I would just print for the user that there was an error. And let's run our program and test. So if I would enter a number in the result, I would just print this number. But if I would enter something else, for example, I would enter a string, I would just write test. So I want to broke our program. In the result, I will catch this error in this except block, and I will get the result that there was an exception. So I will execute this code. Python will execute this code. It's not very informative, like what the error and etc. So for the user could not understand what the problem and etc. So we could do it differently. We can catch the exception, for example, like that. We know that user could enter something else, for not digit, for example, text or list or something else, as I just did. So we need to catch, and we know that it will give us a value error. So we catching a value error, and we will print to the user specifically. So it is not a number. Please enter a number. And let me show you. So I would just write test again, and you would see now we will have a proper error. So we will have it is not a number. Please enter a number. So we catch a proper error. You could also catch it something like that and just print the error. So we catch value error as E, and we just print this value error. So for example, test, and we have this error invalid literal for integer with the base 10 test. So it's also explanatory to the user in the way you wish. So let's return our previous example. We would handle it like that. So in this example, we use a try block to get user input and convert it to an integer. If the user enters a non-numeric input, a value error will be raised. We use the except block to catch the exception and print this error message. We can also use multiple except blocks to catch different types of exceptions. So here in an example, I will just modify this one. So we will catch more errors. So for example, instead of just printing this number, we will do something like result 10, we will try to divide 10 to this number. So if the user would enter not a number, we will catch the value error and he will have this result. But if, for example, user will enter a number, but this number would be 0, and you know that we could not divide to 0, so we will catch a different error, 0 division error, and in the result we would print cannot divide to 0, just like that. So let's test. So proper number. Oh, we forgot to print our number, so for you to see, let's do it again. So proper number, and we got the result. Better to print the result, right? So one more time. So we some number, so we got the result that it would be 2. If we 10 divide to 5, it would be 2. Then if I would enter again test, we would catch our value error, of course. But if I would enter a number, but this number would be 0. Oops, let me run again. But this number would be 0. We catch another error, 0 division error. You could also just use the except block as we did before. So just accept, and then we would just write something wrong. So in this case, whether we enter text or something else, whether it's value error or 0 division error, we would have the result that something is wrong. It's not very informative to the user, so better way just to catch the specific error and get the proper input to the user, so user would know what's wrong. So in these examples, we catch both value error and 0 division error exceptions and print different error messages depending on the type of exception. We can also use a finally block to run code regardless of whether an exception was raised or not. So here is an example. Let me just modify it. So we would write finally, and then we would write to the user, thank you. So we want to thank, we are very polite and we want to thank our user in any case, whether there was an error or not. So for example, if I do everything properly, we would write him a result and thank you. If we will catch value error, we would also write him that it's not a number, please enter a number, thank you. Then we would write the 0, we would also write the user that you cannot divide to 0, thank you, and etc. So this finally block will execute in the both cases, whether we catch the error or not. Finally, we can also raise our own exceptions using the raise keyword. So here is an example. Let me just clear it and create a new example. So we would ask user again to enter his age, for example. Input, and we would ask, please enter your age. And then we check if age less than 0, and we know that age cannot be negative. It could be 0, like you just been born, but it cannot be less than 0 because it would be negative. You cannot be minus 5 years old. Then we raise a value error, for example, age cannot be negative. So in this case, we just catch our own error with this raise keyword. So let's test it. Something wrong. Oh, we don't need this try block. Okay. Just like that. So you just write age. We ask user to enter the age, and then we check whether age is less than 0. Then if it's a negative input, we would raise a value error and ask you and tell user that age cannot be negative. So if I'm 6 years old, it's fine. So no errors. But if I would be minus 5 years old, and we would get this value error with the description that the age cannot be a negative. So this error we raised by ourselves. So in this example, we raised a value error if user enters a negative age. So that is all for this tutorial on exception handling in Python. We will learn how to use try except block, handle multiple type of exception, use finally block, and raise our own exceptions. By mastering these concepts, you will be able to write more robust and error-free Python program. Don't forget to practice. So just start writing your own functions, try to handle your own exceptions, and practice. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more Python tutorials. And remember, knowledge is our superpower. Bye bye.